What is up, guys? This is Josh the Gamer here, coming at you with a brand new video. So today we are going to be continuing on our Quorum game development series, and in this tutorial video we are going to be learning about gravity and how to enable your game to work with physics. Now, this engine, as of right now, is not in official release. There are still some bugs that the Quorum team is currently fixing. They're trying to make sure that it works as well as it possibly can before its official release date on June 1st, 2017. So, right now, how I'm going to be showing you guys physics is I have NetBeans 8.2 currently running on my custom PC. If you want to follow along with these tutorials, I will leave a link in the video description for detailed instructions on how to install the Quorum plugin or the Quorum plugin, so you will have access to the beta. So you'll be on the bleeding edge. And this is on the Quorum website for everybody to see. So I can, say, hey, if you want to follow along with me, here's where you can find how to set it up. You will also need the latest version of the JDK. Just make sure that you have that. You should already have that anyway. JDK 8 specifically. Then you're also going to want to have NetBeans 8.2. I will leave a link down in the video description for where you can go to download that version of NetBeans, because I'm sure that most of you will have 8.0.2 from my Quorum programming tutorial series that I did previously. So now that we have all that out of the way, let's get started on making sure your game is enabled with 2D. So in order to do that, you're going to want to go into your Create Game Action. So let's go into our Create Game Action. Above my code that I have here for loading a filled circle and setting its position and adding it to the screen, we are going to call the Enable Physics 2D action, which is inherited from the game class. So go ahead and do Control Space on your keyboard and find the Enable Physics 2D. Now there are two different options here. You can enable Physics 2D or enable Physics 3D. In our case, as of right now, we are not going to be using physics in the 3D space. That is for a later date. As of right now, we are going to be using physics in the 2D space. So make sure you call the Enable Physics 2D action, pass in a value of true, and now you pretty much have a functioning physics enabled game. However, what I want to show you right now is kind of what we're working with in terms of a template. So I'm going to save this, build it, and run it, and it should just have a ball kind of sort of in midair on the screen at 200, I believe I set it to. No, 200, 400. So that's how that is going to work. The reason I have it so high up is because we're actually going to be doing gravity. So we want to actually make sure that we can pull it down. Yeah. So first things first, let's talk about what's called responsiveness. Now, what is responsiveness? Well, responsiveness pretty much describes how an item interacts with other items on the screen. So, for example, you know, depending on the level of responsiveness, will determine whether your object can, can be manipulated by physics, forces, and stuff like that. There are 3 different levels of responsiveness. There's responsive, non-responsive, and unmovable. Now, responsive pretty much means that the object can be affected by forces such as gravity and any force that is the result of a collision. So keep that in mind when you're creating your objects for physics. Non-responsive will pretty much mean that the object will not respond to forces, but it can be moved programmatically. So for example, if you wanted to do a moving platform, those would be non-responsive, because for a moving platform, you're going to want to move the position of that platform, but you don't want it to be specifically, you don't want it to be specifically affected by gravity, linear velocity, any kind of physics property, really. Then there is unmovable. What does unmovable do? Well, as it would entail, unmovable pretty much means that the object can not only will it not be affected by forces such as gravity or forces that are the result of a collision, but you can't move it programmatically either. So if you change the position of an object that's set to unmovable, visually it moves on the screen, but it will still be there in its initial position no matter what. So just keep that in mind. So now that we have the different levels of responsiveness out of the way, I can show you pretty much how you call those actions for a specific drawable or item 2D or whatever it is that you're working with. So first off, you're going to want to... Well, actually, first off, we need to make sure our object has physics enabled so it can be affected by physics properties. So for that, we're going to want to do our drawable object, so player, : we want to enable physics, true. So now that is enabled with physics. And now we can go ahead and, do what we need to do. Excuse me. Okay. So to make an item responsive, you do the object name, : set responsive. That's how you set it to be responsive. However, to do it non-responsive, you have to call the set non-responsive action. And then if you want it to be unmovable, well, you could probably guess what the action name is. Set unmovable. So therefore, our player is not movable. However, we want it to be movable, and we want it to be affected by physics properties. So our player has to be responsive. So let's go ahead and do set responsive. There we go. Next, we want to actually start with our gravity. So first off, let's create a vector. As you can see, I have the vector class already imported. All I need to do now is create a vector 2D object, or a vector 2 object. So I'm going to call it vector 2 vec. Then inside of our create game action, we are going to go ahead and call the set method for a vector. So vec colon set. We're going to have it take an x and a y. We're going to say 0 on the x and negative 300 on the y. Now, why do we have it set to a negative value? Well, what we want it to do is we want it to fall towards the bottom of the screen instead of floating upwards or towards the left or right. So in order for it to fall down, we need to have a negative number applied for gravity so it will fall to the ground and not to, anything else. So now that we have that, we can go ahead and call our set gravity 2D method, or action, whatever you want to call it. So just do control space, set gravity 2D. Now for gravity, you have 4 options. You can do a set gravity 2D that takes a vector 2, set gravity 2D, which takes a number x and number y value directly. You have a set gravity 3D, which takes a vector 3, and you have a set gravity 3D that takes an x, y, and a z value. However, since we are working with 2D games, we only need the set gravity 2D, and since we're using a vector, we're going to use the one that you have to pass a vector into. So I'm going to go ahead and pass my vector into that using vec as the argument, and there we go. That is pretty simple, actually, and as you can see in our update, we have a very simple if statement that says if the player's y position is less than 0, we're going to set the player's y position to 0. So let's go ahead and run this. So we're going to save it, build it, run it, and then as you can see, the ball falls. And for some odd reason, without a platform, the ball will slowly begin to kind of fall through the screen because of the gravity applied to it. So I believe we can actually fix that. Now, how do you fix that? Well, inside of our if statement, we can try to set the gravity again. So set gravity 2D, we're going to use 0, 0. So we're going to pass it an x and a y value this time. So hopefully then the gravity will be taken away, essentially, so it will not fall anymore through the screen once it gets to be less than 0. And there we go. It's not falling anymore because we completely got rid of the gravity that's being applied to the ball. Very cool. So guys, that's pretty much how you apply gravity to an object and how you enable physics in your 2D games. Thank you all for watching, and we will see you all in the next tutorial.